Hey everybody, before I get started, I just want to mention a couple of ways that you can engage with me on a more personal level. I have a few avenues set up and I keep focusing on one, and I figured why don't I make a short little video talking about all of them real quick before we get into these episodes. So first thing, Patreon. There's a link in the episode description, in every episode description to the Patreon, as well as a video on the feed called Major Announcement that has all the details of what each tier offers and how much they cost. I implore you to check that out. I offer a lot of cool shit for my patrons. Second thing, the Discord channel. There's also a Discord link in the episode description and in every episode description. I have multiple channels set up there for each show that I'm covering, and it's a great way to just engage with me. I have a channel set up for MMA talk as well. I'm a big MMA fan, so if you're an MMA fan, you can check that out as well. There's a link to the Discord in the episode description. And then lastly, the Facebook and Twitter. Social media. Follow me on there. I post news on there. When I say news, I mean like, hey, I'm stopping covering this show. Hey, I'm starting covering this show. Let me know what you think about this. I do live watches of things on Facebook where like I'll check in and say I'm watching so-and-so show, and then I'll like live comment while I'm watching it, and that'll be cool if maybe you watch that show too and you want to watch along with me, or you're watching it later and you will see my thoughts, which are usually pretty entertaining because I'm usually pretty high when I'm writing them. So check out all those links in each episode description, and let's talk about this episode. Peace.
One mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about Season 1, Episode 5 of FX and Hulu's A Murder at the End of the World, entitled Crypt. Now, for those who may not be familiar with the literal definition of the word crypt, here it is. An underground room or vault, often beneath a church used as a chapel or burial place. Now, in this episode, a group of the survivors posits that the hotel they're staying at is truly meant to be like an underground Airbnb for the world's wealthy and elite during the impending climate crisis that Andy and most of Earth nowadays believes is coming. The episode title, as well as the events of this episode, suggest that at least for the time being, it's more like a crypt for them, the residents who are there currently, or the guests who are there currently, because they keep dying off there. So that's my interpretation of the title. If you disagree, let me know what you think in the comments, but I think we're meant to take away that this underground silo is like a crypt for the guest. This show, it can be both really fun and really frustrating at the same time. Like, I already generally enjoy murder mysteries, and this one has introduced tech and sci-fi, and that's right up my alley. I think that's really cool. But it's also chosen a dope setting that allows for beautiful visuals, suspenseful visuals, and I really like that too. I like it when I get it in succession. I like it here, like those big wide shots of the frozen tundra. I dig all that shit. The snowmobiles going across it, all great stuff. At the same time, you really have to let a lot of shit slide with this show, because a lot of implausible shit happens that kind of seems to abide by the rule of the ends justify the means. It's like the plot wants to get to a location, and it's not particularly concerned with how it gets there at times. In this episode, we get a third death. This time it's Sean. And a healthy mix of what I think makes this show stand out in a positive way, along with some of its biggest weaknesses. And of course, that's where I want to start. I think the show's biggest weakness right now is actually Darby. And not the actress who plays her. I think she's doing an incredible job. I really enjoy her. I think she did a particularly good job in this episode. What I'm speaking about is the character of Darby herself. So what my issue with Darby is, I don't like when shows or films have characters literally telling me how to interpret characters or situations, but the behaviors of the character is counter to what they're telling me. Like, all this season, we've been told how smart Darby is and how great she is at solving mysteries, yet time and time again, she does the stupidest fucking things. Like, don't tell me this character is brilliant and then have her behaving implausibly stupidly. Like, I've complained all season about how Darby tends to overshare, and it just kind of reached a level of annoyance in this episode that was really high for me. Like, you're trapped in a hotel with a handful of people that you don't know. one of which is likely killing people. Yet every time Darby learns new information, what does she do? She immediately tells it to someone else. It's the single stupidest act that takes place on this show, and it happens multiple times per episode. If you don't know who the fuck the killer is, why are you telling everyone with ears every single clue that you find? It is maddening that she's this fucking dumb. Like, and they're constantly like, oh, you're so smart. I'm like, every time I turn around, she's a fucking idiot, telling every single person, like, guess what I just learned today? It's ridiculous. Like, I feel like in a situation where you're trapped with a killer, even the most remedial fucking person in the room isn't gonna run their mouth every fucking time they find a clue, because you may be telling the killer how close you are to catching them. It's so frustrating. And then this episode ends with one of the single stupidest moves by a character in the history of television. And I mean, yes, I'm obviously being hyperbolic for effect, but come the fuck on, man. Like, you get signaled via Morse code through a lamp to go to the pool. Already bad idea, but whatever, right? It works for the show. You get there, it's scary as fuck. You got fucking heat coming off this like hot tub part of the pool. It's really cold outside. It's dark. No one is there. There's mysterious sounds, metal clanging to the floor according to the subtitles. So yes, of course you should get in the pool, fully submerge yourself, close your fucking eyes. I mean, my God. This show could run another 100 episodes and no one would do anything that fucking dumb and implausible. It was so irritating. Like, no one in that situation is ever gonna do that. Period. She's cold, get the fuck out of there and go back to your room or go sit by that fire outside. Like, when that cover started to close on that pool, I was so irritated. I was like, good, I hope you die, because you deserve to die for being this incredibly stupid in this situation. Like, I'm telling you guys, I really, really, really hate it when characters on shows or movies do implausible things that no one would ever do in real life just because the show or the movie needs to get the plot to a place and it doesn't care how you get there. This felt like they wanted a, is Darby gonna die? Cliffhanger for next week. And tune in next week on a Murder at the End of the World to find out Darby's not gonna fucking die. Newsflash. It's not gonna happen. It's a pointless fucking cliffhanger, and you sacrifice any kind of plausibility to get me there. It's a stupid way to get to a stupid cliffhanger that doesn't mean shit, because no one watched that cliffhanger and was like, oh my God, I wonder if Darby's gonna die now. Like, yeah, Darby's gonna die with 2 to 3 episodes left. Like, come on, like, it's a stupid cliffhanger, and you were stupid. You took a stupid path to get me to a stupid place. Like that. Ooh, I hate that shit, obviously. So, like, man, that irked me. Okay, so I want to get that off my chest up front, because despite what I just despite my behavior, I did enjoy the majority of this episode. There's a lot to like here. So let's get into it. This is probably gonna be a pretty big video. Like, this was a dense episode. A lot happened. My notes were massive. I don't think I've had notes this long since a Succession episode, but we'll see. I'll speed through it. Hopefully we can, like, my long Succession videos be like 30, 40 minutes and shit. I'm still trying to keep this around 20, but we'll see. So I'm going to start in the present day time, and the episode opens where the last one left off with with Darby stupidly asking, what did you just do, after Zoomer sneezed? Like, Zoomer was well within his rights to go, bitch, I sneezed, you deaf? Like, I don't, again, stupid question. Like, why would you write that into the script? Sneeze. What did you just do? I sneezed. Like, anyway, I don't know if this is going to happen, but it would be interesting, though, if Lee was constantly bringing Zoomer around Darby for this purpose of hoping that she would eventually discover that he was Bill's kid. Now, of course, she feigns surprise when Darby, in one of her mini overshares, that she does in this episode and throughout the whole season, tells her that Andy is sterile and Zoomer is Bill's child. But that doesn't mean she didn't know that, and that she didn't know that it was Bill's child. And if she was bringing Zoomer around Darby on purpose in hopes that she would discover that, then that would be a great kind of, like, response from the show to my jokes about why Lee keeps treating Darby like a fucking babysitter and then dropping her kid off there all the time. So that would be a good explanation. I'm kind of pushing for that. Otherwise, within the context of the show, why does Lee keep bringing Zoomer to Darby's room if it wasn't for that purpose? I don't know. Something else I found interesting throughout the episode that we first see early on is Darby getting dizzy and lightheaded. That happens to me all the time when I stand up too fast from a kneeling position, but I'm old as fuck, and she was just in an accident and has a concussion. So different reasons for that. But at the same time, I do still wonder about the morphine that was given to her after that accident. I could be doing a lot, but like the morphine from the same safe that was the same morphine that killed Bill. I just wonder if maybe it wasn't just morphine. Maybe it was something that was laced with something to kind of like put her in a weird headspace to where she can't think straight. And like I said, I could be doing a lot. It could just be a concussion, but I'm just clearly more suspicious of everyone than Darby is, obviously, since she tells everyone everything. But who knows? Just want to throw that out there. Eva, the nanny / doctor, basically confirms that the morphine was stolen from there, and that the same person also probably took out and turned on that pacemaker machine that we talked about last week. And Darby's had enough, and she wants to see Lee and Andy right now. So Eva takes Darby to the negative 10th floor. And Andy is living in an underground palace that seems like the underground version of the Red Keep from Game of Thrones. Darby, never one to hesitate to overshare or to throw out an accusation with minimal evidence, decides to do both. In her conversation with Andy, she tells Andy she knows Zoomer is Bill's son, which, like, what if Andy didn't know that? Like, if Lee had cheated on him with Bill, and now she's pregnant with Bill's kid, and say maybe she doesn't know that, Andy doesn't know that. She just went in there, she's like, well, I know that Andy is, I know that Zoomer is Bill's kid. I'm like, what if he don't know that? And then she asserts that Bill made a paternity claim, and that's why Andy had him killed, with no evidence whatsoever to support that. She just literally made it up out of thin air. And it's like, and it's not even like, here's what I think happened. No, she comes in accusatory, finger pointing, like, Bill did a paternity claim, and you had him killed, and you had Rohan killed to cover it up. I'm like, okay. And even if it was true, why would you tell the killer you figured them out when you're in an underground room with them alone? Like, again, stupid fucking... They don't think of these sorts of things. It's all about, we got to get the plot to this next thing. We got to do this next reveal. We got to do this next plot twist. And they don't give a fuck how you get there. And I'm just like, this is a totally implausible scene to me. Everything about this was laughable, aside from Clive Owen's performance, which was incredible, but we'll get to that later. Andy reveals that he's sterile, and he's known this since he was 19, so he always knew that Zoomer wasn't his biological kid. Later, when Darby does another overshare with Lee, Lee is supposedly surprised by this news as well, which just makes me wonder, how did this happen? Like, if Zoomer is Bill's biological son, how does Lee not know that? Like either her and Bill fucked, or it was an artificial insemination. Like, there's only the two options, and both options Lee should know about it. Like how is she like, what? And she's like in a bathroom throwing up. Like, how do you not know? I don't know. Maybe the show is gonna explain that in a way that's acceptable for me, but I don't know. I don't see how Lee doesn't know that that's Bill's kid. Like, I just don't. And I don't know. I guess given Andy's affinity for tech, maybe he could have, I don't know, rolled out some tech that makes it possible to get somebody pregnant with somebody else's nut without their knowledge. I don't know, y'all. I don't know. I think the more likely explanation is just that Lee is lying, which is further evidenced by how sinister she got with Darby right before Andy came in the room. Darby continues to overshare and accuse by saying that all of the medical equipment that's there is because Andy is secretly being treated for something, which turns out to partially be true. He later reveals that he's getting life-extending treatment. We'll be talking about that a little bit later. But Andy says that all of this isn't about Bill, it's about him, and someone is trying to destroy him. He even says that his therapist sold him out for a stock play, which I thought was a pretty great line. He then essentially tries to recruit Darby to help him figure out what's going on. Now, if you're someone who thinks Andy's behind all this, maybe you think this is a keep your enemies close kind of deal, right? And that's kind of where I was until a little bit later. But again, we'll get to that later along with the life-extending treatment thing, I promise. And shortly. So Darby agrees to help him, and then they, as a pair, they interview David, the guy who I've been saying up to this point is the one who keeps giving the mean looks to Darby. I now know his name. Oliver, who is the guy in the wheelchair, and Lu Mei, who is obviously the Asian woman. But from David, they find out that him and Oliver have been fucking, and that's why he was in the hall at the time of Bill's death. He was on his way to Oliver's room. From Oliver, we learned that they were originally in David's room at 11:30, but he got a call, kicked Oliver out, and then later showed up at Oliver's room, frustrated, but still very much horny. And I love how Darby never wanted to hesitate to accuse someone of something. Notices his shoes are worn and is like, I noticed your shoes are worn, so you can walk and shit, right? I'm just like, dog. Like, yo, why wouldn't you pocket that information? Like, just tuck that away and be like, yo, he's in a wheelchair and shit, but I see them shoes really worn out. Like, and then just kind of like observe, right? Like, why would you just see that and be like, yo, you lying about being paralyzed, right? Like why would you? Like, I don't understand. Like, why would you not even hesitate to like, maybe what if he is paralyzed and then I just to say that he's lying about it? Wouldn't that be kind of shitty? Like, she didn't even think about that. She just looked and talked and whatever. But he says he could walk, but not for long and not far. From Lu Mei, they learned that she hacked the firewall after Rohan's death to try and get in touch with their security team to possibly arrange an extraction. And then we also learned from her that Lee was playing poker with her and a few others, and she got up and left the room temporarily. Lee later explains it, says, I went to go see Zoomer. Sure. She then adds that her smart city's got some like minority report precog tech that can suss out criminal behavior before it happens. And then she's like, man, oh man, we could have used that here. And then her and Andy like stare at each other kind of strangely. And then Darby does what I am now going to define and call the Darby stare. It's when she like stares at somebody and she's doing it inquisitively with this mix of like analyzing, like what's going on here, but also accusation, like y'all are up to something. It's like a mix of analyzation and accusation. That's the Darby stare. Like she's trying to figure out what's happening, but she's also accusing you. Yeah, so that's what I'm gonna call. When I say the Darby stare, that's what I'm talking about. She does it. I don't want to say she's done it in every episode, but if she has it, it's been like one episode she hasn't done it. Interestingly enough, following this moment, despite knowing that Lee left the room, Andy isn't interested in questioning her. When I say left the room, I mean left the poker room. He's not interested in questioning her. He seems to trust her completely. But he wants to know about the phone call that David got. He asked Ray, and we learned the call was from Bill, and it was only 27 seconds long. And then from that, we later start to learn what that call was about, but it doesn't go anywhere. But we'll get to how it doesn't go anywhere later. So there's more of these things I want to discuss, but I also think this is a good time to reintroduce the topic of the life extending and why I don't think Andy is the killer. So I opened up the video talking about about what I didn't like as it pertains to Darby and her oversharing, her poor decision making, the Darby stare, etc. Well, one of the things I do like about this show that I think really sets it apart from other murder mysteries is how it uses technology. Margaret Moffett, she commented about this on Facebook. She mentioned the same idea that I had in my notes without knowing that it was in my notes. And all I said was that I think the idea of Andy extending his life, building these silos for the world's elite, which isn't too far away from the real life discussion of potentially populating Mars for Earth's wealthy and powerful, to that 3D interactive model of the hotel, and last but not least, Ray. I think these are all just a few examples of the cool shit this show is doing with technology and incorporating it into the plot. And I think that's one of the things that's really setting this show apart. I think they use it smartly. I think it's cool. And yeah, I think that's unique for this genre, and I think it works really well. As soon as Andy said something about life extending treatment, I instantly wanted more episodes of this show for them to have time to lean into that a little bit more. Like, I understand the murder mystery is the focus, and I think tech is really kind of like just a feature rather than the focus, but I do wish they spent more time, significantly more time, on this whole thing with climate change and what Andy wants to do about it. Like, I feel like in the final episode, what we're likely gonna get is the killer kind of like monologuing about tech and climate change and how it drove them to do what they did. But I'd rather have that motivation and set of circumstances really explored rather than just monologued in the finale. But that's my expectation. I set my expectations low. Still, I've enjoyed how much they've incorporated tech into the show. Also, when I mentioned the killer monologuing about tech, I actually changed that from what I had originally written and wanted to say because it would have spoiled my next topic. So originally I was going to say tech and how it sucks, but I didn't want to spoil the fact that I think the show clearly wants us to discuss the possibility that Bill is not dead. From Bill's view of smartphones, which we learn about in the flashbacks, to him saying, I feel like I'd have to die for you to love me, the show wants us to at least be considering the idea that Bill has either faked his death or somehow set all this up to play out afterward. Andy said someone's trying to destroy him. Bill hates tech because he thinks people staring at their phones is like smoking in a movie theater, which is just a completely fucking ludicrous comparison. But like, it serves to let us know how gross he thinks it is when people are just like engulfed in their phones. Okay, fine, whatever. But I think Bill also sees tech as a barrier between him and Darby. And I just want to say up front right now, if the grand lesson of this show is going to be that smartphones are bad and we shouldn't be on our phones all the time, be prepared for me to rip this shit to shreds after the finales. Just say it. But anyway, it doesn't make sense that Bill would want to... doesn't it make sense that Bill would want to ruin Andy? And if he could find a way to make Andy's tech responsible for his death, that kind of feels like a two birds, one stone kind of thing for Bill. He could ruin Andy, and then also, from his perspective, get Darby to love him. Win-win, right? Now, last week I talked about the Ray theory, that Ray was involved, and I said that he would need an accomplice. Multiple times throughout the course of the show, they've established that the killer has intimate knowledge of the security at the hotel. Ray fits the bill for that. He can give all the necessary knowledge on the security to whoever this accomplice may be, assuming they exist. And then I also established we need, like I said, a real-life human because Eva said that they got the pacemaker machine thing out of the cabinet and plugged it in. Ray can't do that. He's not real. He also can't inject someone with morphine or attack Darby in this episode. But Bill can. And they established that the morphine that killed him was taken from that safe in the medical bay. But Andy, when asked about the video footage, he gave names of people who are supposed to be there. Like Bill, Eva, Lee. People who like their presence in the medical bay wouldn't be surprising. Darby insinuates that the footage of the killer taking the morphine was erased or taken or whatever. But what if Bill took it himself and administered it himself to get this chain of events in motion? And then also, Ray has shown intimate knowledge of how the human body works. He could potentially tell Bill something that he could inject himself with that could make him appear dead. Maybe something that stops his heart for X amount of minutes or something like that. So somebody does like this, oh, he's dead. And then he wakes up a few minutes later. I've seen that in a number of movies and films. But that, of course, then begs the question, where is Bill within the hotel? To which I don't have an answer, but Lee's also clearly up to something with her fake passport and wig, so I don't know, she could be in cahoots with Bill too. I haven't thought that far ahead. Now, I'm theorizing a little off the rails here, but I do think this is the general direction we want to go in trying to figure out what's going on with this whole murder mystery. It's not going to be something simple like Lou May did it because she's jealous, or Oliver did it because he's in competition with Andy. Like, I don't think it's going to be anything like that. It's going to be something more complex, like again, a two-person job with Ray being one of the people. And are we not supposed to think that Ray is the one that made the light bulb flicker, the Morse code that sent Darby to the pool? Like, he was right there. Like, I mean, like if that turns out if it turns out that Ray did that, I would be like, y'all didn't even try to hide that. Like, that was really obvious. And then I'm assuming he also is the one that closed the cover of the pool once she got in. It was an automatically closing pool. Like, you didn't have to drag. Like, yes, of course, the person there could have pushed the button, but like, he could have done that too. My only issue with naming Bill as the accomplice or involved is that I don't see what motivation he'd have to kill Darby. Like, I think that Sean's helmet was meant for Darby, and we end this episode with, I think, a pretty clear attempt on Darby's life. I don't see why Bill would be party to that. Now I want to talk about how there's no possible way for Andy to be the killer. So when Andy and Darby are done interrogating everyone, Marius comes in and says that the Washington Post is on the phone because they found out about Rohan and that everyone's trapped in the hotel. And he's like, who told? And Marius doesn't say anything. He's like, well, who do you think told? And Marius still doesn't say anything. And then, ladies and gentlemen, I am treated to probably my favorite moment in all of television this year. Andy just looks down at the floor, he takes a deep breath, and he goes, what is fucking wrong with people? I cannot trust a single fucking person. And he's screaming and he's spitting, and then he just pauses and he looks dejected, like he just gives up on everything. And he's like, he just takes the phone, he just walks off, talking to the Washington Post people. And y'all, I have never felt so seen in my life. I shit you not, I have literally done that. And I swear to you, I am not being liberal with my use of the word literally here. I have literally done that. I mean, screaming, spit flying, the same words. What is fucking wrong with me? I mean, I've literally done that. Like, if there's such a thing as a God, there ain't. But if there was, sorry, religious people, I'm just fucking with you. And he had a DVR like of every human, and he could rewind me. He has a scene of me doing that. I promise you. Like that's not pretend frustration, y'all. That is someone who is truly fed up with everybody else's fuckery, and you cannot fake that. Like, Andy feels like the universe is fucking with him and only him, and there's no other way to manifest that level of rage. I would know. Trust me, y'all. Like, last thing I want to talk about before I get into some thoughts at the end is Sean's death. Sean mentions that as long as Leah's with Andy, Zoomer's trust money is hers too. That feels important, but it's also very counter to a lot of the tech and power-based motivations. Like, a money motive feels weak to me, but then I also don't see why she would mention that. Unless, of course, it's just a regular red herring. Then, of course, Sean dies under mysterious circumstances. Once Darby arrives at her room, she says that she had been waiting on Darby to come. She offers Darby a blanket. They kick Eva out of the room. And then Sean starts to give Darby advice that kind of sounds like what she wants Darby to remember after she dies. And then she says, what a way to go, and then sends Darby to get her some water, and then dies while Darby's out of the room. We still don't even know how. Like, what is her official cause of death? I don't know. I mean, well, there's a possibility. I missed it, but I don't think they say. That very clearly sounded like suicide, but then you have to wonder why she'd do that at that time, purposely waiting till Darby was there but not in the room. And then this prompted Andy to correctly wonder, like, why does death always follow you? Why does death always follow you, Darby? Damn, there was something I want to mention about us not knowing how Sean died. It triggered something. Oh, I'm going to mention this now because I didn't put it in my notes, but I don't know why. I did want to talk about this, so I'm gonna divert briefly before I close out with my thoughts and finish talking about Sean. I wanted to mention when Darby, in the flashbacks, when Darby essentially says that she has figured everything out, and she lays out this whole thing with, what's her name, Eunice Bell, something like that, and she lays out this whole thing, and ultimately they land at what I believe is the house that we see at the beginning of the season when she's reading the book, and she's, at the book reading, and she's reading that, the chapter, and they're at the house, and it's abandoned, and they find the dead body underground, and then someone arrives, and then we don't return to that scene anymore. I think this is the scene that I'm talking about right now, leads us into that scene, where she talks about Eunice Bell, and she's like, and I've discovered that, she says something like, Eunice Bell gave it to her son, Edward. He gave it to his wife. The wife died. So then Edward gave it to his son. The son became a cop, a dirty cop, a piece of shit cop, or whatever. Married Patricia Bell, and then Patricia Bell went missing. So then she's like, she thinks that Patricia Bell's husband is the person who is the killer and is the person who possessed that Eunice Bell ring originally. What I thought was interesting about that scene is that they gave names of everyone except that person. They were like, Eunice Bell, and her son, she gave it to Edward. And then Edward gave it to his wife. And then and then she's like, that gave it to the son. And then I'm like, oh, you ain't gonna say his name? And then she says something like, he married Patricia Bell. Like, she said the full name of the wife. And then to make it even more conspicuous, Bill is like, she says something like we need to go to that house. And then Bill's like, whose house or something like that. She was like, his house. Like, he might still be there. He might still be there. Something like she uses the pronouns. He, him. She never says the name. And I feel like they purposely went out of the way to not say the name of who Edward Bell's son is. And I feel like that's going to be important later. So that's all I wanted to mention. whoever this son is, I feel like they intentionally avoided saying his name, and I feel like we're gonna find out who that is, and then we're gonna look back on this scene and be like, oh, that's why they didn't say his name. Anyway, moving back to Sean. Like I said, that very clearly sounded like a suicide. You gotta wonder why she'd do that with Darby in the room. And then, like I said, it prompted Annie to question why she's always around when someone dies. Everyone who seems to have a big clue for Darby always seems to die before they can give it to her. But Sean seemed to go willingly, and I can't really make sense of that. My only guess is that that big Joker-esque smile that she gave, like, that made me wonder if maybe she was on something at the time. Like, maybe Eva put something in an IV that kind of made her not all the way there, but she still knew what was happening. Like, so she knew that, like, there's something wrong with me. I'm about to die. I've been poisoned. But then I'm struggling to make sense of that, too. Like, why would she send Darby away to die while Darby's in the other room? Like, I don't know. I kind of like to watch the scene again, but this video is already long enough as it is. So, let me close out with some thoughts. I want to give thoughts on a few specific moments, including the flashback scenes, but I want to start with the scene with Darby and Lee. There was a lot to not like in that scene. For starters, I didn't like how it opened with Darby oversharing. She goes in and immediately tells Lee about the sneezing thing and Bill being Zoomer's father. And you know I don't like the unnecessary sharing of new info with people who could be the killer. But then Lee is like, you told my husband that? And Darby's like, he already knew. And Lee's like, what do you mean? And then all of a sudden, Darby decides this is the time to stop oversharing. And she's like, he should tell you that himself. Are you serious right now? She can't wait to tell anyone with ears everything she knows when anybody could be the killer. And then all of a sudden, I don't think it's appropriate for me to tell you that. Like, come on. And then she tells her Andy is sterile anyway. I can't with Darby, y'all. I can't. Like, this shit is crazy. The scene where Todd talked about how his name's Todd, right? Talked about how the bullies killed his brother. I thought that was a dope scene. When he said he heard it was an accident, but he still beat everyone who was there within an inch of their lives, I was like, my man. Should have gave the extra inch, but okay. I'm with it. Next in the flashback scenes, Bill and Darby discuss when they fell for the other person, and this is another example of the show telling me that someone is smart, but having them behave stupidly. Like, she asked she's like, what do you think, she's like, what makes you think I fell for you? And then she changes the subject to the case. And then Bill asks if she ever stops working. He then pulls over. He gets out angrily. He walks into the middle of his field. And he sits down. And Darby's just sitting there on her phone, oblivious to everything. It's like, hey, what you over there for? It's like, I thought, y'all told me she was smart. Like, this is clearly a blithering fucking idiot. What do you mean? What do you mean she's smart? Like, this gotta be the stupidest person. And yeah, like, I get it. She's all on her phone. She's obsessed with the case. The show is toying around with the idea of if there was no case, would they even be together? And it dovetails nicely with my Bill faked his death or killed himself for Darby's attention theory. I get it, but man, it was irritating to watch her be that stupid in that moment. Like, man. But that's all I got for this week. There was a lot going on in this episode. It was a dense one. I'm sure I missed some stuff, but if I didn't, I hope you all enjoy. Let me know what you thought in the comments, and I will see you guys next week for episode 6. And until then, peace.